Good morning, Logan. Welcome to another installment of Geometry from Your Couch. We're going to jump into the second module today on circles. We're going to be trying to find the circumference of a circle. Before we do that, what I want to do is I want to take a look at this circle that we got going on over here. And I just want you guys to notice that this piece right here of the circle, what would you call that? For those of you that said radius, that sounds good. Yeah, that's a radius. And then what would you guys call this right here? All right, for those of you that said chord, that's right, but that guy likes to be called something else. That right there likes to be called the diameter. So remember, it takes two radii to create the full diameter. All right, so that's a little bit of review. So we're going to jump into this. We're trying to find the circumference of circles. Now, to find the circumference of the circle, what we first want to do is we want to make sure we understand what the circumference is. And the circumference is just essentially the length around the circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out how long it is all the way around the circle. Now, to do this, one thing I want to do is I want to take a look at that line right there. Do you remember what that line is called again? That's right. That's right there. That's our diameter. Now, the thing about the diameter is that if you were to take the diameter, okay, if you were to take the diameter and somehow be able to bend it, kind of like that right there, something interesting can happen. You can get it to actually line up on the outside of the circle. Now you'll notice that the diameter doesn't go around the entire circle. It is only allowed to go around part of the circle. But if I was to do that with the diameter a second time, what I end up getting is another thing, another part that I can go around the circle on. And I have now the two pieces of the diameter. I have two diameters going around the circle. Now it doesn't go around the entire circle. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to bend the diameter. That's right, a third time. Now when I bend the diameter the third time, it fits right there. And you'll notice that it doesn't go all the way around the circle. It takes a little bit more than 3 diameters. So now what we have to do is we have to look at this little piece right here. Now this little piece right there will fit the entire circle. So if you think about it, what we have is we have 1 diameter, 2 diameters, 3 diameters going around the circle, and then it takes a little bit more. In other words, it takes 1 diameter, 2 diameters, 3 diameters, and then there's this 0.14 right there. Now 0.14 sounds like random, but it actually is a very calculated number. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, so now I know what the circumference is. The circumference is the length all the way around the circle. And it takes to find the entire circumference, it takes 3 diameters, 1, 2, 3, and 0.14 of another diameter. So if you were to take this and then simplify it, what I mean by that is to collect these two diameter values right here and add them together, what you end up finding is that the circumference is in fact just equal to 3.14 times the diameter. Now for those of you that are aware of that are familiar with 3.14, you might recall from maybe 8th grade or even in Algebra 1 that the 3.14 is an approximation for just pi. And this is where our equation for the circumference of a circle comes from. C, the circumference, is equal to pi times the diameter. All right, so the two equations we have here is the first one is our approximate equation. So that's if I wanted you to approximate the answer. This is what we would use for in applied mathematics. But the exact answer is what we're going to write down as pi times the diameter. So we're going to have two different answers that we're going to be focusing on today. Okay, so let's take a look at our first example. For our first example, we have this circle right here. Now this circle, all I need you to find is the circumference. To find the circumference of a circle, what we want to do is we want to institute the formula. Now the formula for the circumference of a circle is C is equal to pi times the diameter. Now if we know what the diameter is, we can just go ahead and plug that in. Now if you look closely, you'll notice the diameter is 11. So we'll say that the circumference of this circle is going to be pi times 11. Now, if you want, you can simplify your answer. What I mean by that is you can write it in its exact form. You can say that the circumference is just 11 pi centimeters. Now that's kind of a weird answer. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what you might want to do is you might want to try and plug it into your calculator. So you might want to plug in 11 times 3.14 to get the approximate answer. And when you multiply 11 times 3.14, the result, give me 1 second, 11 times 3.14 comes out to 34.54 centimeters. And this is our approximate answer. So we have two answers. We have the exact and we have the approximate answers. Okay? All right, so let's try a second problem. Now, in the second problem, it's going to be a little more complicated because the diameter is actually not given to us. You'll notice that in this problem, what they gave us is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle. In other words, they gave us our radius. And you'll notice that our equation for the circumference of a circle does not include the radius. What we have here is that the circumference is equal to pi times diameter, but we don't have a diameter. But if you recall from the beginning of the notes for today, the lecture, is that the diameter is just 2 radiuses. And our radius in this problem is 5, so we can go 2 times 5. This gives us that the circumference is equal to pi times 10. Now we can simplify this, and when we simplify it, what we end up getting is 10 pi. And this is going to be our exact answer. So the circumference of the circle is 10 pi inches. But if you wanted to simplify it or get an approximate answer, you can substitute pi for 3.14. And what we end up finding out is that the circumference can be approximated to 31.4 inches. So you'll notice you actually don't need the diameter to do the problem, you just need to be able to find the diameter. And this leads us to our last example. Now this one is way more complicated. You'll notice that in this circle, we actually have a triangle that is inscribed inside of it. And one of the sides of the triangle actually is part of the diameter. So then the question is does this triangle allow us to figure out the length of that diameter? So we have to look at it, and I don't know, does anything come to mind? Well, what do you know about right triangles? If you're thinking to yourself, well, I remember right triangles from trigonometry, that's good. So you could use SOHCAHTOA, but you could also use Pythagorean theorem, the first thing we learned about when we talked about right triangles. And Pythagorean theorem just states that if you have 3 sides, you could label them as a to the power of 2 plus b to the power of 2 is equal to c to the power of 2 must always work for right triangles. So we just have to plug it in. Our a is going to be 3, so we have 3 to the power of 2. Our b will be 4, so we now have 4 to the power of 2. And our c, well, we don't know what c is, but I want to call it the diameter, so d. So instead of writing c, I can write it as d to the power of 2. And then we simplify. 9 plus 16 is equal to d to the power of 2. Or 25 is equal to d to the power of 2. Square root both sides of the equation, and we find out that the diameter is just equal to 5. Okay, well, now that we know what the diameter is, we can find the circumference of the circle, because we can use the circumference formula. The circumference of the circle is equal to pi times the diameter. And in this case, the diameter is 5, so we're just going to write the circumference is equal to pi times 5. Now you have 2 options here. You can either write it in its exact form as 5 pi, or you can simplify it to 5 times 3.14. And then when you multiply 5 times 3.14, you get the approximate answer of 15.7. And now we have the circumference of this circle. The circumference of the circle is 15.7 units around, approximately, or the exact answer being 5 pi. All right, so if you have any questions, go ahead and send me an email or just shout out on Google Classroom. You can also just show up for tutoring or office hours based on the Logan schedule. The last thing I want to say is that for today's assignment, if you guys are asked to find the exact answer, please write, instead of 5 pi, I know you can't type in pi, you can just write 5 pi in word form as 5 and then the letter P and I. No spaces and just lowercase. If you have any questions, like I said, hit me up on Google Classroom or email. All right, we'll talk to you guys pretty soon.